promise, I told you I would be back after the showing of part one and part two of my story. And then I told you from there I would proceed. What I want to do is just set a foundation. I know I said this previously, but I just want to set a foundation in the home because I want some of you to see how things can appear to be so, adoring or lovingly to others on the outside, but there can be complete, and when I say complete and total chaos on the inside, man, I live this thing. So I'm going to share a couple of stories with you, short stories, say a few things, and then we'll just build off of that. As many of you know, after listening to the story, yes, I was being molested in the home by a sister. And my mother had these problems where, like I say, man, we got whippings for the least. And she would line us up and you just waiting your turn to get a whipping for whatever. And that was what the inside of the home looked like. I remember we had some neighbors, and the guy next door, his name was Tyrone. And I, as a 5 or 6 year old kid, I was, thinking that Tyrone was in the military. I think that's what I was told, he was in the military. And, you'd see Tyrone a little and you wouldn't see him. And they had, I noticed like there'd be women over there, but, as a 5 or 6 year old, they're women. And in this little place we lived, it was called Lincoln Trailer Park. I used to remember the lot number and all of that, but I don't remember that anymore. And we could walk into like a little housing area, from Lincoln Trailer Park, and there was an old lady that had a store. Her name was Miss Lena Bell. And, we walked to the store. This had to be like 1970, 1971, somewhere around there. Walked to the store, and everybody knew everybody, so a 5 or 6 year old could walk and, things would be okay in the hood, so to speak. And they called me Peanut because of the shape of my head. They called me Peanut. I think my brother, Kerry, may have gotten that started, but it stuck back then when I was a kid. So everybody would call me Peanut, Peanut. And I can remember, and I want y'all to listen to this. This is, okay, my stuff going on in the house, being molested by a sister, being physically abused by a mother, verbally abused, emotionally abused, all of that. And listen, I'm not making any excuses, man. I'm okay now. Don't feel sorry for me. I'm okay right now. I'm okay. But I want you all to understand how this monster was built, so to speak. So they call me Peanut. I run errands in the neighborhood. And one day, next door in this trailer, one of the ladies says, "Hey, Peanut, come here, come here. We want you to go to the store for us." And so I may have been out there playing. And at this age, like I said, I'm about 6 now, I believe. And so I run up to the door, man. And when I look in the door, there's like about 5 or 6 women in there, just naked, some partially clad. And it startled the hell out of me. I'm just like, and they seemed to think it was funny. They were giggling. They were like, at my innocence, I guess, And it startled me. And then they said, come on in, come on in. And I'm like at the door, and I was, hesitant. And then they gave me some money and asked me to go to the store. And I went to the store for them, came back. But here's what I'm saying. I want you all to understand this. That stuck with me. So, okay, I'm a 6-year-old. I've got this going on, what I just witnessed. I'm at school one day. I had a friend named John. He was a white guy. And John and I, school was out. And we were getting ready to get on our buses. And there was a bully in the school. I remember the bully's name is a guy named Paul. And he wanted to jump on John, man. I just wasn't having it. And before I could really do what I needed to do to protect John, he swung. I ducked out of the way, and he hit John. And I mean, John was just bleeding like a stuck hog. This is 19, probably 71, 72, somewhere around there. Now, I'll get a date or a year off or two, but don't hold me to that, man, because I'm just trying to. But it had to be like around 1971 or 72. With the fight going on, it really wasn't a fight. He hit John in his nose. He was bleeding like a stuck hog. The bus is pulled off. I missed my bus, and John missed his bus. I said, okay, John. I said, I'll walk you home, man. I walked John home. John's just crying. He says, I don't know why people have to, all this violence and all of this. And he's just bleeding. We're trying to stop the bleeding. And during this time, man, we'd walk a mile or two, and that was nothing. He probably lived a couple miles from a school, and I know I lived further than that. So finally, we get into John's neighborhood. I walk him home. He's still crying. I get him up the steps, and his mom said, what happened? What happened? He's telling his mom. I tell his mom. And I stepped in the house, and she says, okay, you can step back out there. She told me I could step back out on the porch. And that didn't bother me as much, telling me to step back out on the porch. That didn't stick with me. She asked me, she said, where do you live? And I told her Lincoln Trailer Park. This is in Leesville, Louisiana. And she said, oh, I said, yes, I live in Lincoln Trailer Park. And so she said, okay. She did appreciate me bringing her son home to the point that she allowed me to get in her car, and she drove me up to the railroad track. And at that time, the railroad track did not mean anything to me. But she drove me up to the railroad track and told me, I had to get out. I could walk home from there. She wasn't coming over in the hood, I guess, And I still had a couple miles to walk. And keep in mind, I'm like 6 years old, y'all, but the hood took care of the hood back then. They'd see me and people, hey, that's the Jenkins boy, and they'd make sure I get home, Not so true today, but I'm saying, like I said, 1970, 71, 72, this is how things happen. When that happened, it affected me. I mean, even as a kid, I'm wondering, why couldn't she take me, to my house? But later on, it would become apparent as to why she couldn't. And then the railroad track, it just took on a different meaning for me. Wherever I would go, man, I would see railroad tracks. That's what I people talking about having gone through things that was sort of like life-altering or scarring. Yeah. Whenever I go somewhere now, especially like in these little towns, I see like a railroad track, I'm like, oh my God, And then it even makes it more triggering for me if it's like one of those towns where, like blacks live on this side of the railroad track or whites live on this side of the railroad track. And it's just one of those things that happened when I was a kid, and it has stuck with me. And, I'm going to share some other things that happened leading up to, what led me spending 26 years in prison.